this thing, which, I mean, it's good. I'd love to be able to say, look what I bought. And he showed us this, and I thought railway locomotives have names. And over the course of 2 or 3 years, we just suggested that Radio Caroline might be an appropriate name. John, I'm sure, will explain why in just a moment. And then when we got to his agreement and painting and renovating the engine and naming it, and then we thought, well, we need somebody that someone's heard of to name it. Who do we know that's into Radio Caroline and railway locomotives? Couldn't find anybody. So we followed him. So I'm sure Rick, I know Rick is eager to talk, I'm eager to hear him as well. But first of all, let's just go, we're still waiting for Peter Moore, but let's start with John Jolly. So, John, thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Am I coming over?
Yeah, you're loud and clear.
Yeah. Well, as Ray said, there's a bit of history to all this. The Mangapps Railway started off actually by myself and James here, my son, 35 years ago, well, 1987, that must be about 35 years ago, and it's built up to what you see today. And the reason really why we decided to buy this Class 31 locomotive here, in fact we bought 2 of them while we were at it, the last 2 of them that were working for Network Rail, was that they were originally built for the East Anglian services. It was back in the days long before Dr. Beeching, when there was a lot more railways in East Anglia than there are today. So that was back in the late 1950s. This one was built in 1959, and they in fact they covered most of the railway services in eastern England and then spread all over the country, and eventually this was the very last one that was owned by and running with a national railway organisation, Network Rail. Now the reason that we thought that this would be a suitable one to name for Radio Caroline is that the loco itself was introduced in early 1959. It originally worked from the Stratford depot, a place which has now been completely wiped off the map and covered with the Olympic Park. But after a few months at Stratford, it moved to Ipswich, and it was allocated to the Ipswich locomotive, Ipswich locomotive depot, right through the 1960s. Now we all know what happened in the 1960s. There was a great social and cultural movement, I suppose, wasn't there? Basically it was pop music. But in the early part of that time, there were really no opportunities for people to enjoy it as and when they wanted. And eventually an Irish entrepreneur called Ronan Riley bought a boat, put it out in the North Sea and started broadcasting as Radio Caroline, which upset the authorities no end. He was, as far as I'm concerned, he was almost as unpopular as President Putin is today, and similar sort of threats were made. But nevertheless, Caroline kept going, was joined by various other, I don't know whether you call them competitors or co-conspirators or what. But anyway, Caroline, after all these years, is still going, still broadcasting from a boat, the Ross Revenge, just north of here, out on the Blackwater estuary. The point is, of course, that you can't keep a boat like that going forever. Rather like one of these railway engines, eventually they need a lot of money spent on them. And the basic reason for all this really is to try and raise awareness of Radio Caroline and thereby get the wherewithal to do necessary repairs to Ross Revenge and keep the whole thing going for another half century at least. The suggestion of naming this locomotive, of course, came from my friend, neighbour and fellow Essex boy Ray, and we thought it was an excellent idea given the history of the locomotive and the history of Caroline, remembering that we did discover when we worked out that the engine spent a lot of time with Ipswich, that by the law of averages it must often have hauled trains containing Radio Caroline staff and DJs when they came out from London to Ipswich and Harwich to join the boat. So that's the connection. Right,
John, Thank you. I mean, John, I'm not knocking at all, but John could give you the history of British Railways and we could still be
I
here.
can easily do that. Right?
Yeah, no, I knew that, John. Can I just quickly introduce Peter Moore from Radio Caroline, and Peter, if you'd like to go and grab the microphone, and then Rick will, we keep the start till the end, you see. So,
Really? Who's that?
he hasn't got it yet.
Oh, I have to stand up on account I'm a bit short. Don't have much to say. Thank you very much for turning up. I've never seen such a crowd, really. I was worrying there'd be about 3 cars and I'd feel terribly embarrassed. But you're mob-handed, so it's very kind of you. What encourages me about this museum is I've only got one ship and one project which needs repairing, although it's a daunting task. But when I see what John's achieved, it makes me think that what we want to do must surely be possible. So enjoy the afternoon, enjoy the nameplate and take lots of photos and show it around. Have a train ride in a minute behind this expert train driver. But he'll explain himself very well, John's explained himself very well, so you don't really need me, but enjoy the afternoon and thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter Moore. Right, just a couple more words before Rick takes over. We've got a locomotive, we've got an idea, we've got agreement, which nowadays is hard to find in any organisation, and we've got nameplates, so all we needed was somebody to name the thing. And I was fortunate enough to interview Rick from my studio, which sounds very glamorous, but it's the back of my garage earlier in the year, and I thought I could find a like-minded friend here, and I just sort of stuck in, would you be interested in perhaps Caroline? Yes. And then I took a chance one Monday morning and fired off an email. I thought, I'm not going to get an answer to this. Within 5 minutes of my email saying, Rick, got a little idea, yes. That was all we needed. Or was he talking about the band? I'm not sure. Rick might know.
Yeah, like many of you here, I'm sure there might be one or two of you here bordering on my age, but not many to look around. When I was a kid, the big things that happened to me were the railways. I was born in 1949, so 50s were all steam engines, and then started to become diesels, and then we had the dreadful Dr. Beeching, who, it's a shame really that he's not on the track because we could run over the guy. He did so much damage. But that's by the by. I mean, I love the train. It was glory days of train spotting. Used to love going to my holidays for train spotting. Loved it. And at the same time, then as you come to the early to mid 60s, suddenly for us kids there was nothing musically. We had the Light programme on the radio. Anybody remember the Light programme? Yeah? Sing something simple. I mean, give me a break. And that was all we had, and Force's family favourites, and it was dreadful. And then suddenly along came Radio Caroline, Radio London, and a few others, and there was the music that we loved, and not just us, but people older than us, and we suddenly had music to go with all of the changes that were going on. It was just such a fantastic time, and like all of us, we were just addicted to Caroline. There's never been anything like it since, and with no disrespect to what the BBC once called One Radio 1, 2. I mean, the 6-5 special, I remember that, yeah. Thank Your Lucky Stars and Ready Steady Go. God, man. Anyway, Radio 1, yeah, they tried to copy the Pirates, and it sort of worked to a certain extent, but to me it didn't have that wonderful magic of the Pirates. It really didn't. I got to know in the late 60s, early 70s, a load of the jocks off of the boats, and I take my hat off to them, not just for the great work they did, but for managing to stand upright. I mean, they automatically all moved like this when they got off the boats. None of them ever stood still. Trains, love them. I love it. I took a quick little story. I was asked about 20 years ago if I would turn on the lights at Minehead, and I went, no. It's a long way from me. I was living in Norfolk at the time. I'm in Suffolk now. And I said, no, that's too far. And they said, well, I tell you what, you can have a ride on the steam trains down there. I said, you're getting close. And they said, how about if you come down 2 days before and we do you a course and teach you to drive? I said, I always wanted to turn the lights on. So I went down, and that's where I learned to drive steam engines, which was, I cannot tell you, do you do lessons down here for people on trains? Do you do that? I tell you what, one of the greatest presents you can give somebody is to provide some lessons to drive. It is phenomenal. I can't put into words how great it is. So anyway, cut long story short, my association with Caroline, with radio and with my love of trains, and I've been involved at Barrow Hill. You know Barrow Hill? Yeah, I've done some stuff up there. We did concerts up at Barrow Hill. Great fun. When I got the call, like, yeah, of course, yeah. I did have something else in for the day, believe it or not. But I can see the mother-in-law any time, so it wasn't really too much of a choice. So it's a pleasure to be here. I just hope they've spelt the name right. Do I undo it from this end? Oh, you're the professional at doing it. Cool. Wow. Whoa. Is it full? I'll bet you can't guess what it's called. Ready? On behalf of Radio Carolina and on behalf of Mangapps Railway Museum, I declare this train as Radio Carolina. That's fantastic. Spelled correctly as well. That's really good. Thank you. Yeah, enjoy yourself on the train, and have a good look around. Book some lessons.
Just a quick word as well before we move on to the next exciting bit. I ought to just say that the magnificent state of this loco is thanks to some of our volunteers, particularly to Dave Brennan, who some months ago decided that it would be a good idea to get it repainted. It was in a horrible shade of rather dirty yellow previously. And so we've repainted it, or Dave and his friends have repainted it in pretty much the condition that it was in the 1970s under British Rail. So there we are. Well done, Dave, Tim, Andy, and
Gentlemen, thank you very much. And I think the plan now is to just be shown what you've got to do, find out where neutral is, fire it up, and off he goes. Again, take your photographs. Please, it is wise to keep off the railway tracks when there are railway locomotives around. But Rick, on behalf of Caroline, thank you very much. Thank you. Quick round of applause for it. Thank you.